Right. Aloha, everyone. My name is Dr. John Souza. I'm president of the Hawaiian Islands Association for Marriage and Family Therapy. And hey, Happy New Year. And it is 2022. We have not done a Facebook Live for quite a while. The end of the year, changes in routines, needs for self-care and shoring up other responsibilities. So it's really nice to have the time and the space and some really important stuff to talk about in reconstituting our Facebook Live meetings here. I'm hoping that by doing this, I will generate some interest in people sharing their stories. Because this year, I should say the beginning of this year, the reason I'm doing this is to really bring to the foreground our legislative efforts. And as some of you may know, the 2022 Hawaii legislative process started last week. And since the 2021 legislative session ended, myself and several other folks in the HIAMFT community have been meeting regularly with the Hawaii Psychological Association representatives, Ray Follen over there, and the National Association of Social Workers, Hawaii chapter, and their representatives, including Sonia Banyan-Bagaki. And here we are now in 2022 with some bills that we've created with the help of our joint lobbyist of Policy Matters, LLC, Becky Gardner. And the bills that we've introduced have really come to fruition because of the work of all those people I just mentioned, some people I haven't mentioned, and some very cool senators and House of Representatives. There are so many that I could name. I'll shout out to one of my friends and a woman who taught my daughter how to surf, Laura Ocasio. Her and her family are so sweet. And I knew Senator Ocasio before she was a senator. And then she became a senator. And I said, hey, let's talk story and see what we can do together. And so she actually has introduced a bill for us that I'll be talking about here in a moment. And then some other senators have really been helpful, and House of Representatives speakers have been really helpful in moving our efforts at least into the legislative process. So without further ado, let me just show you a quick little social media post that I created over the weekend that kind of gives a high-level overview of the two major bills that we're looking at here. And let me just make sure I got my sound share going on here. As the pandemic continues to negatively affect mental health, need for greater mental health access. And so the first let's allow ongoing mental health. Across the country. And that is just a high-level overview of the issues and what we're doing. Now, as we've been meeting with folks, we've been as we've been meeting with legislators, we've been getting a sense of what might be some of the roadblocks, because every time we talk to a senator or a member of the House of Representatives, they all seem to have pretty much the same response, which is, this makes so much sense. Of course, audio only telehealth makes sense. The associate level licensing actually makes a lot of sense. If we have all these people around and they're not able to provide services because they've got to leave the island, or they've got to go into different career fields because they can't earn a living during that 2 years between post-graduation and getting a fully independent license, then of course we want to help keep them, allow them to continue to see their people. The roadblocks seem to be around a couple of main issues. So I'll just speak briefly to the roadblock to the telehealth bill. The audio only telehealth seems to center around fraud. And that is really about, mostly insurance companies worry that, let's say there's some hack doctor on the Hill who is gonna just call clients, do a 1-minute session, but bill the insurance company for an hour. And he's just gonna do that all day long. And he's gonna have done, maybe 60 minutes worth of work and collect $50,000. Now, I don't want to invalidate that, of course, because that might actually happen. And I think probably from what I've heard from people in workman comp situations, that might be something that occurs, where maybe a physician or somebody else who's qualified to check on people in those workman comp claims can call and just do a brief check-in, and then they might bill more for more than they actually did. I have to say, though, in mental health, in behavioral health care, I really haven't ever seen that. It's especially in a private practice. I co-own a group private practice with my wife, and I honestly can't imagine that my clients would stand for me trying to limit our session to 1 minute, 15 minutes, a half hour, if they were expecting an hour session. Especially if they have a copay associated with that. They're just not going to stand for it. So I'm either going to go out of business, or they're going to call the insurance company or DCCA and say, hey, what's going on here? And when we've done our own research on the MFTs that might have been had a RICO claim brought against them, we have it, meaning something related to fraud. We only found 2 claims relating to an MFT and RICO in the last few years, and neither of them had anything to do with insurance or fraud. A related roadblock would also be, so let's say we took care of that issue, that I think insurance companies would need some reassurance that us providers have a process in place to triage those clients who are and are not responsible, or who are or not appropriate for telehealth. I'll just, again, speaking for myself and my practice, we have several layers of screening in place. There's the initial inquiry for services, where we ask clients, what are you seeking and for what? So that gives me a sense of what's going on there. And then we have our actual intake form, and that's another layer, another opportunity to see what's going on. And then, of course, that first meeting, we have been socially sanctioned by the state of Hawaii to use our clinical judgment in making these decisions. And so usually after the 2 screenings and then the first session, I can have a pretty good sense of whether or not this client's going to be an appropriate fit. If I need to add some additional assessments just to get really clear on that, I can certainly do that. But I think in terms of that concern from an insurance company, I would say that the biggest thing would be for them to understand that that's what we're trained to do, is to determine those things. And that's why we are licensed. Which leads me to the associate level licensing. I can't really speak to any potential roadblocks just yet, but I know they're going to come. And when they do, I'll share what they are here. But I just want to speak to the benefits of that. It really is about improving access and quality of mental and behavioral health care by creating this path for locally based clinicians to move through their training and earn a living, uh, which is incredibly important because you really want to increase the, especially here in Hawaii, we have such a unique culture here, and then there are subcultures all around on the different islands. And to have somebody that was born and raised in a specific area, say in Pahoa, for example, I know of a young man right now who is trying to figure out how to move through the process of getting licensed, but it's really tough for him because he has a family, he's got kids to take care of, and he can't go to one of the other islands to do supervision and to try to find another job that will help him get his license. It would be much more helpful if he could stay here, say join a private practice or join an agency, and that they could bill for his services under a supervisor or a independently licensed clinician who could then act as a mentor. So not only would that associate level licensing increase the likelihood of someone like I just described actually finishing their license by committing to the process and creating a strong bond with the supervisor under whom they could bill, it would also increase the likelihood that the clients would utilize the services, because Hawaii does actually a pretty good job of providing insurance to a lot of people who would otherwise be uninsured. But if you have somebody who isn't from here or doesn't fully look like, say, somebody who has brown skin or is Hawaiian or Filipino, it kind of looks like me, even though I was born here, let's face it, I look pretty white. I mean, I am white. I'm Portuguese and Spanish, and Irish and German. But my point is, it's much more likely that that person, if they see somebody that looks like them, is likely to utilize the services and feel comfortable, especially as soon as that clinician opens their mouth and they can maybe speak pidgin or some other sort of thing that makes the client feel comfortable. So these are just some of the issues that we're thinking about. That's some of the way that I'm imagining that it could be really beneficial. And what I'd like to do as we move forward with these Monday Facebook Live events is to invite you to offer your thoughts. What do you think about audio-only telehealth? And what do you think about an associate level license that would allow a post-grad, pre-licensed person to bill insurance under independently licensed person's credential? By the way, I should mention that 23 other states do this already for MFTs specifically. There's one way that I earned a living when I was getting licensed is I was able to bill under someone else's license. And her office, my supervisor's office, was right next door to mine. And I had this sense of really learning who I was as a therapist while also having this great support right next to me. And I was able to earn a living. And it was a really wonderful way to grow up in the field, so to speak. So that's what I have to say about that. I haven't been monitoring any chats or anything, but I will hope that this has all been going well for you and it's interesting. And I look forward to the next time that we meet, which will be next Monday, which will be the 31st, I believe. And I'll try to start at 10 a.m. Hawaii time, although it might be 10:30 if the surf is really good, which is what happened today. The waves were epic and I just couldn't get out of the water. So that's all for today. I'll put some links to some YouTube videos in the chat that highlight some of the audio only telehealth issues per some HIAMFT members and another person who is a psychologist, Dr. Richard Reese. And a shout out to Amanda Hess and Mitch Berman for sending us some audio only telehealth audio that we could use for our social media campaign here. Okay, that's enough for today. Have a wonderful week. Aloha and mahalo for supporting marriage and family therapists in Hawaii. and the access and utilization of mental health services for all mental health professionals and clients. Take care. Aloha.